Thank you so much for tuning in to our very first episode of In Studio with me, Bobby Garcia. And we have an incredible guest for you today. His name is Doug Pineapple Saladino. He is a recent inductee into the Skateboarding Hall of Fame, but his story is so much bigger than that. So I know you're going to love this interview, so let's get started. Doug, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, and incredible guest. Oh, wow. Kind of setting the expectations a little high there.
We'll talk more about that later on, but I know what you mean. But listen, in honesty, I really appreciate you being our #1 guest. I've been talking about doing this for a while and planning on it, and it's just good to see it all come together. And most of that is because of you. So. Thanks again. I appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
although we've been friends for over 45 years, I think when we're done here, I'm going to learn a lot of new things about you I didn't know before. So, yeah, looking forward to digging in with you here.
Uh-oh.
I'll take it easy. So, let's start with the beginning. So, skateboarding. So, when did you first step foot on a skateboard? Where were you?
Actually, I was just having this conversation with my mom yesterday, and she has this picture, and I have it somewhere. And it's a picture of me standing on a steel-wheeled skateboard at 2 years old, a couple houses down from where I grew up over in Kearney Mesa. Yeah. So kind of got introduced to skateboard at 2 years old, and I don't know if I was in a diaper still, but I was definitely something to that effect.
That is great. I'm impressed that your mom took a picture of you that young, and to realize that this many years later that photo would be so relevant. That's crazy.
Oh man, yeah. I posted it somewhere. I'm sure it's on my Instagram account or Facebook.
That's
or
great.
Something. Yeah.
So okay, so you first stepped foot on a board at 2 years old, which you wouldn't have known if you didn't have a picture of it. So that's great. And then, so when was it that you rode a skateboard for the first time and said, "Wow, this is something I want to do"?
I would say probably around third grade. I started surfing right around third grade, and I can recall having a skateboard back then, and it was more of just kind of skating around as transportation or whatnot. I would actually skate from my elementary school over to the bus stop right after school, and then take the bus down to Pacific Beach where I'd go surfing. So probably around third grade, and back then it was a wooden skateboard, Chicago trucks and Cadillac wheels, but not Cadillac wheels just yet though. It was actually clay wheels.
Oh my gosh! So, well, first of all, you mentioned surfing because that's a young age to be surfing, unless your parents are lifelong surfers as well. So where did the surfing influence come from? I know your parents came from Hawaii, but who was it that was surfing who introduced you to surfing?
Actually, there was this gal a few houses down, Val Leone, and she was in high school, and she was 18 years old, and somehow we got to know their family, and one day I noticed that she was taking off with this kind of long-haired, hippie-looking guy in this like old little Morris Minor, like Woody, and she was actually going to the beach every day, and so I got to know her. So she started taking me to the beach with her, and so we were both learning how to surf right around the same time, and that's kind of how I got into surfing, and then I started to love surfing. So that kind of leads into going every day after school, getting on my skateboard and rushing to the bus stop to get on the bus to go down to PB, Pacific Beach.
Wow. So you know what? And if I could back up for just a second. So when you first started out, I'm guessing that your skateboard in the beginning was, although it was clay wheels, it was very similar to this, because these were the first trucks that really came out.
Yeah, right
really
here. This is a Chicago truck with Cadillac wheels and ball bearing wheels. So there's 7 ball bearings on each side of the wheel, which were kind of a pain if you had to change the wheels, right?
Right. No, I remember them falling out if the nut on the outside was loose. Yeah, it made for a real dangerous ride. So this vintage, actually Pioneer truck and wheels, because this really was a game changer in skateboarding, as we all know. But it's attached itself to a trophy that you won. So this is 1974. It says the San Diego Skateboard Championship, second place boys overall. Tell us about where that was.
Yeah, that was at Kate Sessions Park down at Pacific Beach. And this was a skateboard contest that the Western Surfing Association had put on.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was hanging out with this guy, Joe Roper, down at Pacific Beach.
Oh, we know Joe.
And we decided just to go enter this contest. And lo and behold, there were some people there like Chris Yandel and Jay Adams and Greg Weaver and Steve Cathy and a lot of people that were actually surfing contests were entering this skateboard contest.
Yeah, there's some pioneers of skateboarding mentioned right there. So, so you do this contest, and actually I had heard of this contest. I really wasn't skateboarding at the time, but it's funny you had mentioned Kate Sessions, because it was just a few months ago I saw some raw footage on social media of these young skater kids bombing the hill at Kate Sessions on the grass.
Yeah.
And tumbling and falling and high-speed wobbles, and so yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize that Kate Sessions had such a connection with skateboarding early on.
Yeah, early on,
So
it did, and that footage that you saw on social media was probably from one of Hal Jepsen's movies. It may have been Go For It or Super Sessions, and he would always include skateboarding footage.
Wow.
And I can just sort of guarantee you that that footage is actually from that contest, because everybody was bombing the hill, bombing the grass dirt hill, basically.
It's really cool footage. It's reminiscent, because I'm really a lover of early dirt bikes in the 70s, and kind of like on any Sunday. It was so it makes sense, because the footage did look like you could very easily insert it into a Hal Jepsen movie. So yeah, that makes sense. Hey, so you start out skateboarding as a kid, before this contest here, but you were already playing a sport, right? I mean, your dad was coaching you. You were playing baseball.
Yeah, baseball was very much a family sport for us. All my brothers, we all played baseball.
Yeah.
And come to find out later on that, my dad liked us involved in something, because at an early age he was getting into trouble in Hawaii. I think
Right.
he, I heard some crazy stories about my dad. Funny stories actually now.
I can believe it. And growing up, knowing your dad, nothing would surprise me. I'm sure he was the Clint Eastwood of Hawaii.
Actually, him and his brother, they had like separate little gangs. And they were always fighting each other, fist fighting and shooting each other with BB guns.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. So you're so you're a kid. You're skateboarding now. Again, unlike today, where I'm sure if you took a poll, there are so many kids that would say, "Hey, I want to grow up to be a professional skateboarder." Absolutely. But in the early 70s, that was not the case. So, what did your parents what did they think about this skateboarding thing when you began to spend so much time with it?
Yeah. Oh man, it's they knew it was something I loved to do.
Yeah.
And I think they saw it as a way for me to stay out of trouble. Because again, we all played baseball, and come to find out later on that we were all playing baseball just to stay busy and to keep us out of trouble.
Sure.
So I was playing baseball and skateboarding, and that's kind of how it all evolved. There was really never no thought of like, would I be skating, 40 plus years later. It was just something that I loved to do. It was a part of what I did.
Right. So here's another one. I honestly, all these years, I've never known what the genesis of your nickname is. So, Pineapple. So, when did that happen? And who was the one that gave it to you?
Oh man, Joe Roper, longtime San Diego surfer.
Oh yeah, pipeline surfer. I
Oh
remember.
man, big wave surfer, early pipeline. Like I said, I would take the bus to the beach every day, and to go surf. At the same time, I would hang out at San Diego Surf Shop, which was right next to Crystal
Right.
Pier, and Joe was always there, and so I got to know him. So I kind of became his little shadow. I would always hang out with him and go everywhere with him, and as skating progressed and as we both started to skate, we both got on Bane, and this is how I recall it, but he may tell the story a little bit different. I remember one day because we used to practice. Bane used to have a skateboard practice every Sunday up in Encinitas at the Bane factory, and if I can recall it correctly, I was trying a trick, and he kept calling me Coconut, because I was being really, really hard-headed, and then somehow it evolved into Pineapple, and so it has stuck with me, since '75, and
Wow.
that's what people know me as today in the skateboarding community. But that was Roper, man, and him and I just had some conversations a couple weeks ago, and he kind of tells the story a little bit different, but I was amazed with his memory. He remembered a lot of stuff that I'm like, what, huh, what?
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, you're skateboarding. You're in contests. Obviously, you're getting better at skateboarding. Then what happens? You mentioned Bane. So you start out with Bane skate team. Well, first of all, who was on that team with you?
Oh man, so I got on Bane in 1975,
Uh-huh.
and that was after the Del Mar Ocean Festival, which was the Bane Cadillac contest, and that's
Right.
the contest where Jay and TA and Stacy and all the Z Boys showed up, and just kind of took everybody by surprise. Skating actually changed at that point, but I got on Bane after that contest,
And it was that contest right there, right?
Yeah,
Hold
this
that
one right
photo
here.
up right there. So that's you at the Bane contest, Del Mar Fairgrounds. And what year was that?
My mom was so good at making notes. I'm looking at it right now. April 25th, 1975.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So 75, very popular contest. It was probably like the first big contest, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, this was when Jay and the crew came down from, from Venice, from Santa Monica, and yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they took everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
And that just kind of skateboarding just started to kind of explode at that point.
So you're on the Bain team, and I know there's many other people that still skate to this day that were part of that team. It was a team of up and coming stars. And then so what's the story behind your move then? Because you were on Bain for a while, and then you move. It's still a young kid. You move to Gordon and Smith, the GNS team.
Yeah, that was So here's what happened. Like
Here's the real story. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so I'm on Bain and I'm starting to win contests. You know what I mean? And almost every contest that I would enter, I would place. I would do well, but I wasn't getting in the magazines.
Huh.
And come to find out, there was some sort of like beef going on with somebody that was kind of one of the team coaches for Bain, and
Politics.
absolutely politics back then. And he had this beef with the editor of Skateboarder magazine at the time, Warren Bolster, and Dave McIntyre, who just passed a little while ago, was the team manager for Gordon Smith, and kind of heard that I was looking to make a change, and asked me if I wanted to come ride for Gordon Smith. So I wanted to ride for Gordon Smith, but my dad didn't want me to.
He wanted you to stick with where you were,
Oh
right?
man, yeah. Think about it. My dad retired from civil service after 30-something years, and he pretty much had one job his whole life. And he kind of
Right.
looks at it, he goes, "You're not leaving Bain. They've done so much for you. I go, what? I go, come on, and I remember just, God, now I think about it, sitting in my room, pissed off, and actually kind of crying, because my dad won't let me go to Gordon Smith, you know, and then, um, and then later on, he kind of, not too much longer after that, he goes, okay, if you want to leave Gordon Smith, you can, I mean, leave Bain, you can, and go to Gordon
Right.
Smith, you can. So it wasn't that much longer um, after that conversation I had with my father that I left Bain to go to Gordon Smith, and man, after I got on Gordon Smith, my whole, I guess, skateboard career at the time
Right.
started to change.
So you didn't have an agent yet. So who helped you make that move from Bain to Gordon and Smith?
There was really, it was just kind of a decision that I had talked over with my dad.
Yeah.
Nobody really had agents back then.
Right.
And so it was just like, okay, go ahead. And then I hit up McIntyre, and it was just like, come on over, and got on Gordon Smith, and then my career just started to take off.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So now you're at Gordon and Smith, and so who was on the team when you first? Because that was before I came along. So who was on the team when you first joined it?
When I joined Gordon Smith, it was Steve Cathy, Bob Shea, Bob Frost, and I think that was kind of it. I mean, Roper kind of came along as well.
Right.
But the team was very, very small when I joined it.
Yeah. So Ellen hadn't come along yet.
Ellen wasn't there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then so you left a few people behind on Bain that would then join you later. Masami?
Masami Countryman, Dennis Martinez came over,
Yeah.
and I think even Bobby Boyd when I look at some of these old
Right.
pictures.
Right. Right. And I didn't know that Bobby was part of the Bain team as well.
Yeah.
So very cool. Very cool. Okay. So So now let's jump in. So now you're really involved. Your dad helped you make a decision to make a change. You're on the GNS team. Things are happening. Pictures in the magazine. So with that comes sponsorships. So again, I want to really touch on your parents because parents are always important in our younger lives when we're making decisions. And for you, these decisions are adult decisions. So what did your parents think? I mean, how did they let you make most of these decisions on your own? How involved were they?
They were pretty involved. We talked about these decisions, and my dad was always good at weighing things out. With that move to GNS, like I mentioned, my career started to take off.
Right.
And I remember being at Black Hill one day up at La Casa and skating around, and Warren Bolster comes up to me and says, "Hey, I want to do Who's Hot on you." I said, "Whoa, wow, cool." And everybody wanted to have, that was
Oh, absolutely.
that was the thing to have back in the day.
Right.
Was a Who's Hot in Skateboarder magazine.
So that was a feature, Skateboarder magazine, right? It was usually a one-page photo.
Two page.
2 pages. Sorry, 2 pages. We want to get that straight. 2 pages. Feature on an individual, almost like an up-and-coming, who's hot.
Absolutely.
And usually was the gateway to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's huge. And to have Warren Bolster
Oh
come
yeah.
over and approach
What's
you.
kind of crazy?
Wow.
What's kind of crazy about the pictures of my Who's Hot is Warren was taking pictures of me when I was on Bain, but he wasn't putting them in the magazine. So if you really take a look at the pictures of my Who's Hot, I'm actually on a Bain skateboard, but I'm skating for Gordon
Right,
Smith at the
right,
time.
right.
Little tidbit there.
I've seen it many times. I did not realize that. Okay, so you got into Who's Hot, and then so how long after that did you turn professional?
I turned pro right around 13 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, because this trophy right here, what is that dated? I think that's 1976.
So that's dated April
Yeah.
17th,
See,
1976.
my mom took the little article in the newspaper and then taped it on the back. So I won this contest at 14 years old. So maybe, no, it's probably a little bit after that because this contest I won, I was an amateur. And at the time, to be amateur, you could not accept any money.
Right, I remember.
So it was a pro-am, and I skated against pros, and I won the contest, and I won $300. And Dave McIntyre said, well, you're going to need to donate that money because you're not going to be pro just yet. So I had to donate my $300 to some charity. I think it was Teen Challenge back then.
Right.
And so this right here, this article says 14 years old. So I guess not too much longer after that is when I turned pro.
Interesting. So I remember part of this because I remember how crazy it was that here you were, young teenager, or is what we call now tweener, and you're cashing checks. You're going to the bank. You're not even old to have a bank account on your own, and you're depositing money. How did your mom and dad handle that? I mean,
you know what? I was getting money from royalties, right? And that check would just kind of go in the bank, But as my career started to progress and I started to pick up more sponsors, I was getting checks from the truck company at the time was ACS. So I'd get weekly checks from them, and then the royalty checks that I would get from my model, my pro model, that would go in the bank. And that weekly check was really cool because I would get that weekly check, right? And I would go buy cassette tapes, So I had all these cassette tapes, and that was kind of my money just to spend, But being my dad and my parents were on top of things, I was always setting money aside because I had to pay taxes back then. I remember going for the first time to some tax guy, and my mom and dad take me and I have to do taxes because I've made this money. So that was kind of trippy.
Wow, no, I didn't know that, but it didn't surprise me. So okay, so you are now professional. How about money? Money at times could be a very touchy subject. But I know your parents, and your parents were very smart with money.
They're frugal. They're frugal.
Frugal. Okay.
They're Asian.
Okay. So here's the question. So what kind of advice did your parents give you? I mean, I know they didn't let you just spend money frivolously.
No.
Okay.
My parents were all
what
about
kind of advice did they give you then?
Save.
Put it under the mattress?
Save.
What?
Save.
How about investing?
I did some investing early on. I think maybe 15 or 16 years old, I bought some property on the Big Island of Hawaii, and they had that forever. And they were all about saving and finding something to invest in. And so I bought some property on the Big Island.
Wow.
That I don't have anymore.
Well, that's still smart. Would that be probably the best investment you made early on?
At the time, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Okay. So here's another question on money. What was your first big purchase, or was there a big purchase?
My first big purchase was my 1970 Monte Carlo.
I remember.
And that was at 15 years old.
I remember it. I remember that car.
Yeah.
And then you passed it down to your parents.
Yeah, I did. Remember that? Your grandfather.
Right.
He helped me get the rims and tires for that thing.
Yeah, I remember. I remember. Let me get back to the team here real quick. So looking back on the team, looking back on sponsorships, looking back on the money that came along with it. Obviously, the sponsors is what fueled that. Pictures in the magazine, appearances, stickers on the bottom of your board. So with that, what are some of the other sponsors that you picked up along the way while you were still, with GNS?
Some of the sponsors along the way were Kryptonic Wheels. And at that time, it was me and Steve Alba, Mickey Alba, and Scott Dunlap. We rode for Kryptonic, and we rode their wheels, and D. David Morin was our manager. And he took us...
While he was in law school, right?
Yep, he was in law school.
He was at USD Law School at the time, living at the beach.
Yeah. So he used to take us places. I mean, I remember going to Colorado and going to other cities and states just to go skate and do demos. Yeah. So Kryptonics is one of the sponsors, and I briefly had a clothing sponsor, but which was back in the day called 360 Sportswear, and that was another sponsor. Didn't really make a whole lot of money off of that, but it was just something kind of cool to have.
Right.
And then eventually, I hooked up with Independent Trucks, and I'm still riding Independence to this day, and they still take care of me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm still sponsored, but they take care of me.
I'd say it's the same thing. You're still on the inside, so that's great. That's great. Let me transition here to a subject I know makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, and that's popularity. So, so during during the last year especially, I keep hearing more and more how, Doug Pineapple Saladino, legend, skateboarding, pioneer in skateboarding. What do you think when you hear that?
A little uncomfortable. I think that those terms are a little bit overused.
Mm-hmm.
I was just blessed and able to do something that I did well in, and that I still get to do today, and I was a part of it, part of the skateboarding community at a very early age, and kept skating. Right. There's many people ahead of me and ahead of our generation from the '60s. But that word, those words and those terms are just a little uncomfortable because I am who I am, and I was just lucky. I was blessed.
You have a little more time to get used to it. Let me ask you. So one of the other things that skateboarding was able to do was that, through your popularity, is it transitioned very well into other things, other passions that you picked up along the way. Lowriding, I know, is a real big one, and one that you and I shared for many years, and still do. And also, what a bonus! Your wife, Cindy, when you met her and realized that was something that the two of you shared. It's crazy to think. Now it seems like it would transition very well. Professional skateboarder. He's into music. He's into motorcycles, Harleys. He's into lowriders, of course. But in the '70s, that was not so much a connection, but you connected very well with it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's I'll share something with you, and so when I transitioned from elementary school, which I went to elementary school in Kearney Mesa, and I went to Montgomery Junior High School and then to Vista, it was just like I was surfing and I was skating and I was already in the magazines, and when I got to Montgomery, there was just things were kind of segregated, and
right.
And the Filipinos hung out here, and the Mexicans here, and you know what I mean? I think you understand what I'm talking about. And back then, Filipinos, I'm sorry guys, but Filipinos did not surf, or skate, and they were just I was being frowned upon per se, right? And at that time, my neighbor was in high school, and she was hanging out with this guy that was into lowriding, and so I kind of started to gravitate towards the lowriding, and then eventually when I was in junior high school, man, the Mexican community just took me in, man. It was crazy, and it was just like I was like the coolest thing since maybe sliced bread or something, and I've always felt so comfortable, because they took me in at a very early age. What do they call it? Your formidable years, or whatever,
right.
And I mean, I'm kind of sharing from my heart right here, right? And kind of what happened is just like I wanted to be accepted, right?
Right.
And these dudes took me in, and then ever since junior high school, I share this story with some of the older, Mexican guys around town that are still in the lowriding, and they totally get it, and that's kind of all it all happened. And so being that I was making money at an early age, I was able to build a lowrider at a very early age. I had that Monte Carlo I bought at 15 years old, right? And I put true spoke wheels on it and a chain steering wheel. And when I got my permit at 15 and a half years old, my mom used to park on the side of the high school, and I had my permit. I would run out there after school. She'd hop over, and I would drive home, you know? And yeah.
I remember. And then so the 70 Monte Carlo was a nice one. So this is July 1980, Lowrider magazine. Got the famous Cheech and Chong on the cover. But tell us about this. So this was your second car.
Yeah, so this is my 64 right here. And I had just got done with my interview in Skateboarder magazine. And in Skateboarder magazine, my car was still primered, right? And one day I get a call at home, and it's from this guy, Salvador Casillas from Lowrider magazine. And he says, hey man, he goes, my name's Salvador Casillas, I work for Lowrider magazine. And he goes, I saw your article in Skateboarder magazine. And he's like going, we didn't know like pro skaters low ride. He goes, we want to do an article on you. Man, I was like so stoked, you know. And by that time, my car was all painted. The interior wasn't done yet, you know, but it was painted. And so this picture right here is down in Mission Bay on the grass over by, yeah, I forgot where, but it was on Mission Bay. That's kind of where everybody hung out on
Children's
weekends.
Pool.
Yeah, and then so he came down and he interviewed me, and we took pictures of the car. I took him to the skate park, and he took pictures of me skating, and you know that was God, 1980.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
What was
amazing.
that,
And
41
actually,
years ago.
I know. And then since that time, even though you don't have the car anymore, I've seen the car stenciled on the bottom of skateboards, several of your pro models. And yeah, you continue to see that car pictured. So that's amazing.
So
amazing.
let me share a story about
Yeah.
my skateboard. So after I kind of got out of skating, I was like, as a professional, like skating contest, street skating was coming around. So Gordon Smith decided to do a board for me, and we called it the Street Cruiser. So what I did is a graphic of my car was put on the bottom of my Street Cruiser model, and at the time there was a pretty big hobby store, and they were buying a lot of the Gordon Smith boards, and so they said, hey, we like that board, but you know it's a little racist, you know. So we had to change the graphic. So if anybody, for those people that have the board, the original board
Wow.
with this graphic, you know, the original one, not the reissues, but the original one, you know, hold on to those, you know. And again, that's what, early 80s, 1980-ish, you know,
Right.
81. And you know, we had to change the graphic because that graphic of my lowrider on the bottom of that board was considered too racist for this hobby store.
Wow. It also shows how acceptable the lowrider culture has gotten today, because it's lowriders are much more accepted today than it was back, you know, 70s, 80s even, and actually so multicultural.
Yeah,
you know.
it's a lot
good to see the
different today.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
40 plus years later, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
You know, but let me circle back real quick to
Sure.
the Cindy, right? Like,
Yeah.
So when I met Cindy, and I met Cindy through our boys, right?
Mhm.
Shay and Gabe.
Right.
And come to find out, like when Cindy was growing up out in the high desert, she was kind of hanging out with the Mexicans and the
Right.
lowriding culture back then. And she has some really cool pictures that she shows me from time to time. But you know, when we used to cruise Highland, right, back
Yeah.
in 81,
Yeah.
80, 81, and she had just moved down to San Diego, and she said that she used to hang out on Highland as well, you know. So she goes, we probably crossed paths on Highland.
I'm sure.
You know.
I'm sure she might have been one of those that were standing on the curb or hanging out as we were driving down Highland. That's amazing. And I've seen some of those pictures posted.
Yeah.
And yeah, some really nice cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice cars. So now let's bring it full circle. I understand that you are working on a project car.
Project?
Yeah, project car. And we've been working on it for some time. So
Long time.
We're going to be able to see, is this going to be unveiled sometime soon, or?
You know, every time I put a date on breaking out my car, it just, you know, I think it jinxes it.
Uh-oh.
But
Ground up restoration, or?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to get done soon.
Good. What year? What year
It's
and what kind of car?
It's a 1968. It's an Impala. It's a fastback.
Nice.
And I just got it back from this guy who's known for his hydraulics. They call him Carrot. And I was just always blown away by his work. And I waited for this guy for quite some time, and it was definitely worth the wait. So he had my car for a little while, and would show me progress pictures, and one day he said, "Hey, come on down," you know. So I went down to his house, and he goes, "Bring your rims too," and so I brought the rims, and him and his brother put my new rims and tires on there. He goes, "Here, hold these switches real quick," and I hadn't hit a switch like what, like since early 80s, you know. And I go, "What do you want me to do with this?" And he goes, "Stop." He goes, "Go ahead and hit that switch." Oh man, it was the best feeling ever. So I go in the garage and take the cover off it right now and just play with the switches.
Wow, it's a roller, so it's rolling, so it's going to be done soon.
There's not that much left to do, and,
Okay.
and I just talked to a friend of mine that is going to finish it up.
Good.
You know? Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see it.
But I was at this car show a few weeks ago, and a couple people, I'd run into people, and they would say, "You have a car, right?" I said, "Yeah, you want to see the
Word is.
pictures?"
Right. Well, it's going to be well worth the wait, I'm sure, because I know you stay connected with a lot of people in the low riding community, and if anybody knows how long it takes to do a car and do it right, it's them. You know, years usually, and yeah, you can't hurry some things. So that's exciting. Can't wait to see what that looks like when it comes out. Speaking of Cindy and the boys, I know early on you traveled quite a bit with the boys, taken to skate parks all over the country, and you know, traveled quite a bit with them, with Gabe and with Shay, and wow, just seeing pictures and videos of them, they're rippers. It was amazing. It didn't surprise me that as much time as you spent with them. Do you get a chance to go out and skateboard with them now? I know they're older now.
Yeah, I don't skate with them as much.
Yeah.
Shay blew his knee out a couple years ago, and he's just procrastinating getting that thing fixed, his meniscus and his ACL, and Gabe's still skating a little bit. You know, they're both kind of working.
Yeah.
Kind of in that workforce now.
Sure.
But I don't get to skate with them as much anymore. But we did quite a bit of traveling though when they were both growing up.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing the pictures.
Yeah.
Amazing. Some of the places that you would go with them. I'm sure it was much more than skating. It's as we know, as much travel as we did when we were younger. It's bonding. It's just having a great time.
Yeah,
You know?
it's pretty cool. I mean, Shay and I spent quite a bit of years traveling, especially when there weren't any skate parks or a whole lot of skate parks, you know, in San Diego. Him and I would go up to Oregon. We'd go up to Northern California. We would just go anywhere that had skate parks.
Right.
And now there's skate parks everywhere. It's really cool to see them kind of, you know, all come to fruition. And
Yeah.
I mean, San Diego has so many skate parks, and it's super cool.
I bet. So now, let me touch on something that you had mentioned a little bit earlier, and that is, I know sobriety is a big part of your life, and I knew you. We've been friends so long. I knew you before, sobriety. So tell us a little bit about that, where that road to sobriety began and where you are now.
Oh man, December 6th, 1992, you know. Yeah, I hit bottom. And, you know, what would seem all fun and games at the very beginning, you know, just my addiction progressed, you know, and we talk about in the rooms, right? You know, I was a hope to die dope fiend, you know, and woke up one morning and I had this moment of clarity, and my guitar player at the time had just gotten sober, and you know, he, in the middle of the night, you know, before I woke up, he stuck a meeting schedule underneath my back door, and when I woke up, like I said, I had the moment of clarity, and I called him, and he said, hey man, don't get loaded today, and I'll take you to a meeting tonight, you know, and that was December 6, 1992, and it's a part of my life, you know. The 12 steps are a part of my life, and I still do the same things that I did when I first got clean, and as a result, my life has changed, you know, and I have this life today that I wouldn't even think would have ever been possible, you know, because we don't know that, right? When we're deep in our addiction,
Right.
we don't know what is out there, you know, and I love to talk about my story when people ask, you know. You know, we talk about attraction, not promotion. And if somebody comes up to me and kind of has an idea of what my life is about and how I got there, I'll sit down with them, you know. I'll tell them my story. I'll take them to a meeting, you know. I have people reach out to me on social media sometimes and ask questions.
Right.
You know, and like I said, I mean, if I can help one person, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and that comes out. I actually recently heard a podcast that you did on sobriety, and yeah, powerful words. It's a subject that that I know sometimes some people think, you know, divides us, but like you, I see it much more like a you know, like a life preserver. You know, you throw it out there, and you see who grabs a hold of it. And it only takes one person,
Yeah,
to make it all worth it.
I mean, I got a little bit of time, you know, but as I share, you know what, I had one day at one time. I just have a bunch of days now, multiple days, but all I got is 24 hours.
Right.
You know, if I slip away from what I do, you know, if I stop going to meetings, if I stop calling my sponsor or stop reaching out, you know what, man, it's just a matter of time, you know. And I've seen it all too much, man. I've seen people just kind of like, oh, I'm okay, I feel well,
Right.
and never make it back.
Yeah. It's easy to get too busy, and I know, but I know for you, it's been something that you're very intentional about. You make sure that you don't get so busy that you don't go to a meeting, that you don't continue to work those 12 steps. So, yeah, that's.
I mean, again, the life I have today is a direct result of the 12-step program, that I attend.
And I will attest the fact that I've seen it like most of your family and friends. Yeah, it is the reason why you are who you are today, and I'm sure it makes you a much better father and a much better husband as a result.
Absolutely.
Yeah, boy, I'm glad we got through that subject there, because I know that's a tough one.
It's a good one,
but one
you know.
love
But
to
it
talk about.
brings me back to, you know, like if you were to ask me what I was doing that week before I got clean, I could pretty much outline it. You know, I can tell you pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
You know, I don't forget where I came from. You
Right.
know? And when I share my story sometimes with my sons, you know, like, you did what? Huh?
Right. Yeah, and I think so often that people might even just say, oh, well, but you know what, that was a sign of the times. That was, you know, we all did it. Oh, come on, we all did it. And and some people come through some experiences like that, for the most part unscathed, but most don't. Most end up with some type of an addiction, something that is just stuck to them, and they just can't shake it. And so, yeah, it's important for people to hear that. And obviously the people closest to you know that, seen it, or like you said, your kids, they should know what the person you were to appreciate who the person is that you've become. Yeah. Okay, Doug, let me turn the page a bit here. So let's talk about something that was really the genesis of me even doing this show with you, and that is 2020 came along. So for those that don't know, 2020 was a year none of us will forget, but for different reasons. For you were voted in to the Skateboarding Hall of Fame. Okay,
yeah.
Which is the pinnacle in the skateboard community. So usually what would happen is when you are voted in, between the time that you're voted in and you're actually inducted at the big celebration dinner and event, is you would have press conferences, you would have dinners to go to, you would have interviews that you would be doing, even sponsorship ads celebrating your accomplishment, and you even had a trip plan where you and other skaters were going to go to be at the Olympics in Tokyo. So, but the problem is all that changed with the COVID pandemic. Everything was canceled. Travel was shut down. The Olympics was shut down. So it started out to be quite an exciting year, but having everything canceled like that, what was that like?
Yeah, 2020.
It's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, it actually is a loaded question. Man, I was so excited and so happy, and just felt so blessed to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and the day that I got inducted, they were doing a live stream. It was kind of a bittersweet day because a good friend of mine and a good friend of the whole skateboarding community, Jeff Grosso, passed, so it was kind of a bittersweet day. But yeah, 2020 was just, like put a kibosh on everything, Good friend of mine, Lance Mountain, was working on this kind of a short documentary on what the first pool riding contest was, which was Spring Valley, the Hestra Series. So Lance had spent a bunch of time putting this little kind of short documentary together, and the intention was to hopefully get it out to Tokyo and do it, screen it like as some sort of like art show before the Olympics. And so I was hoping that I could have got to go back to Japan last year, but it didn't happen. So yeah, 2020 was just kind of a put a kibosh on everything, and
like a do-over.
Yeah, and then the induction ceremony didn't happen, and not sure when that's going to happen, and this guy Mark Waters, who was kind of heading up the Skateboarding Hall of Fame, he passed of COVID this year in January, which is sad. So not so sure what's going to happen with any induction ceremony, and if it's going to happen at all.
Well, well, first of all, you had mentioned Tokyo. So you said going back to Japan. So I remember.
Did I say that? I did
yes,
say that.
You went to Japan with, I know, Steve Cathy
and Ellen and Dave McIntyre.
And Dave McIntyre.
Yeah.
So you went with a couple of your GNS teammates. And where did you go and when did you go?
When I got to go with Steve, Ellen, and Dave McIntyre when I was 15, turning 16, because I believe I turned 16 when I was in Japan. And at that time, I got to go because I was shooting my first cover for Skateboarder magazine.
This one here.
Yeah. So yeah, I was shooting this cover right here.
remember
So
that.
that's
Oasis Skate Park.
yeah, that's September 1978, and I was shooting the cover, and at the time I was riding ACS trucks, and I was trying to get put on salary, and there was no word about me getting put on salary. So I goes, hey, I thought to myself, well, I'm gonna go shoot it on these other trucks, because they'll put me on salary. So then I shot the cover once at Oasis Skate Park on the ACS trucks, and then Dave McIntyre got wind of it, and then well, actually he knew about the cover, but at the same time I was, I felt like it was time for me to get put on salary, and ACS wasn't doing anything. So then I decided to go shoot the cover on a different set of trucks. So I shot the cover twice, and then when Dave McIntyre found out that I reshot the cover on these other trucks, he goes, oh, wait. He goes, they'll put you on salary, but you have to, that cover needs to be that cover of you needs to be on ACS trucks. He goes, and if you decide to do that, I'll take you to Japan with me and Ellen. So I got to go to Japan. I got on salary with ACS trucks, and I got the cover.
For such a young age, you were pretty good at putting these stills together. Pretty good at putting these stills together. And so with that, let me ask you. So I remember a couple people that come to mind for me, but what about for you? Who back then, in the early days of skateboarding, what other skaters did you look at and say, well, you know what, they seem to really have this whole sponsorship thing figured out when it came to working out deals and talking with sponsors and letting them know what you think you're worth, instead of just taking what they give you.
Yeah.
Who else do you point to that you really?
When I think back, Steve Cathy always did well,
Yes.
getting the sponsors together, getting sponsorships, getting some deals going. I always watched Steve. Little did he know, but I always watched him.
Right.
And Stacy Peralta did well.
Of course.
There's quite a few that did well back then, because at that time, companies wanted a piece of you. They were willing to give you whatever to come over and skate for them, and I'll give you more. I'll give you a model. How much do you want? But GNS always took care of me. GNS kept me grounded. Dave McIntyre specifically kept me grounded and helped me through the early part of my Gordon Smith career.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Those are two people that I definitely remember. So you'd mentioned passing of Jeff, and I know the skateboarding community has lost a lot of people, too many over the years. But there's a few that I made note of that I know that you were very close to. Going back several years up to the most recent passing of Mikey Laris, who was a teammate of ours. So what I wanted to do was just kind of list them and just see what you had to say about each of them. If I go back to when we were younger, a person that stands out is Bobby Piercy. People that left at a very young age. Bobby Piercy was one. Warren Bolster, you mentioned, from Skateboarder magazine. Of course, Larry Gordon, who started Gordon and Smith. It was a big part of your career early on. And then Dave McIntyre, who was our team manager, who was very instrumental in bringing you over to GNS. And then a good friend of ours, like I mentioned, Mikey Laris, who was on the GNS skate team with us, who the three of us spent a lot of time together, traveling throughout Southern California. And then probably one of the biggest passing was Jay Adams, who I know you were very close to. I remember the two of us, oh gosh, it had to be the late 70s. I remember we went up to his place.
Oh wow, we stayed at his mom's. I slept in Shogo's corner.
and that was quite an experience. But who would have thought? You fast forward and how his life had come full circle in so many ways, and then with that, passing at still an early age. So, you know, the group of people individually, I know you had quite a relationship with each one of them. What do you think of when you think of them? What comes to mind?
Man, when I think of Bobby Piercy, when I think of him, I think of him because where Bobby lived at the time, he was en route from my elementary school to the bus stop. So I would skate past his house every day, and most of the time he was out front, you know. So, which meant that I would kind of stop and say hi and see what he's doing, and we talked for a few, and he'd jump on my skateboard, and then lo and behold, years later, we're both skating out there. You know, he was one of the top slalomers of all time. You know, he's pretty much that rock star of skateboarding back then. You know, and so I think of a lot of good times with BP, and the ironic thing is after I got out of skateboarding and when I started riding motorcycles and Harleys, I started hanging out with Bobby's dad, Bill. We used to call him Big Bill, and he was just this big old biker dude. And so I ended up kind of hanging out with him, and we talk stories about Bobby all the time, you know. And yeah, I think about BP from time to time. You know, he was a very, very integral part of my earliest skating. And I remember one trip because we were all going to the Catalina Island for the Catalina Classic, and I was just telling the story to somebody the other day. And so we're a bunch of skaters are on that boat from Long Beach going to Catalina, and at that time Bobby was riding for Brewer, and he just made me this sweet offer, you know, come skate for Brewer, I'll give you a model. What do you want? I'll give you whatever you want, you know. And then McIntyre got word of that, and then things just started happening with my career with Gordon and Smith, as far as getting a pro model and all that.
I did not know that. Interesting. One of the things I remembered, Bobby, like you said, it truly was at least the first person that I remember. You know, I didn't know anybody else that came that close to being had rock star status as Bobby Piercy.
Oh, yeah.
But it was his the outrageous parties he had on Quimby Street, and it wasn't until many years later, after his passing, somebody had actually wrote a story, and a few people thought it was fictional. And I remember reading this story and thinking to myself, and I didn't go to all of them, but the few that we went to, that was his lifestyle, and people thought it was made up. And so but I knew you were close, and like you said, even after skateboarding, that relationship continued. How about Warren Bolster? You had mentioned Warren, you know, editor of Skateboarder magazine, photographer. In the beginning, there was nobody bigger than Warren when it came to getting pictures in the magazine. Yeah.
He's like I mentioned earlier, you know, I'm at the Black Hill at La Costa, and Warren got word of me making the move to Gordon Smith and just saying, hey, I want to know who's hot on you. I go, nice, let's do this thing, you know. Like, and again, I mean, early on, he was a big part of my career, and helped me to get, you know, where I got to at the time.
And I think there's, I'm sure, a lot of people that could point to Warren and say, yeah, he definitely played a big part in my success, people's success in skateboarding. Let me ask you about Larry Gordon, of course. Larry, like you, was enjoyed his private life, so to speak. Wasn't a self-promoter, but he was quite influential, not only in the skateboarding industry, but in the surfing industry, which is where he started, and and left us all too soon. What do you think about when you hear Larry's name?
Oh man, I'm forever grateful. You know, Dave McIntyre pretty much ran the skate division and ran the team, and Larry left it up to him and trusted him. But I'm forever grateful to both those men.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Larry, I remember, the time that I was on the team and going into the factory, and we'd go in to get equipment and boards and what have you, or when I would go in there to get my one sponsorship check a month, which to me was a lot of money back then, but it wasn't to most people. But I remember Larry just being gracious and always calm. But it was also very cool because it was a family affair. It was he and his wife, his kids. I remember Debbie working there when we were there. But yes, this is incredible guy. Dave McIntyre, unfortunately.
I got a quick story about
go ahead,
Larry.
Please go ahead.
So after skateboarding, after I was kind of, not really skating contests, and it was that time where you need to start looking for a job.
Right,
You
right.
know, like I started working at the factory, and I remember I came into work one morning, and I just got out of the water. I was surfing, and so I went from my surf session over to the warehouse, and at that time I started listening to a lot of rockabilly music. There was scenes going on. There was the punk scene, there was the rockabilly scene, and whatever. And so I was all into rockabilly, and I had my left ear pierced at the time, and I would wear a cross because that was kind of cool back then to wear a cross, hanging cross. I remember walking into the factory, forgetting to take that out, and just kind of like running into Larry, and he kind of looks at me and goes, "Is that an earring?" I go, yeah. So that was like 40 years ago, right? And I was thinking I was like 19 or something, 19 or 20, and yeah, it was like a long time ago when people didn't really wear earrings,
Yeah.
And he just kind of looks at me and goes, "Is that an earring?"
I'm sure he loved you the way you are, the way you were, and would say that same thing to this day. Dave McIntyre, of course, as you mentioned, being the team manager and having being there for pretty much your whole career, and I know we were all shocked recently. He was planning the reunion for the skate team.
Yeah.
And I remember having a few phone conversations, or more than that, texting and emails. But yeah, to come to find out that just weeks before the reunion that he would pass, I'm sure it was difficult on a lot of people. And you had an opportunity to speak to that at the reunion.
Yeah, man, he's yeah, I mean, Dave took me in. He brought me over to GNS. He opened the door for me, and my parents trusted him.
Yeah.
Think about it. Your kid who's a teenager is going off somewhere and with this guy with other skaters, and they're gonna jump in this van and they're gonna drive to Northern California. They're gonna drive to Arizona. Yeah, this says a lot.
Yeah, he was an incredible guy and very giving guy, obviously, to do that job. And I know he obviously enjoyed each and every one of those trips. I remember him saying. But yeah, Mikey Laris, and I know that we were fortunate enough to spend time with Mikey at his bedside in his last few days. Again, taken from us too soon. What things come to mind when you think of Mikey?
Oh man, Home Avenue,
Home Avenue.
Spring Valley. Mikey was a ripping skater that was really underrated. And I think one of the reasons why we got along so well is because he was part Hawaiian and his mom was from Hawaii.
Right.
And my parents were born and raised in Hawaii, so I think we had that connection there. He just never got the notoriety that he should have outside of San Diego, maybe.
Amen.
I mean, there's some iconic photos of him as well. In the half pipe at Oasis, off that hump.
Right.
That was before there was even an ollie. You know, Mikey was just
Yeah,
caught midair floating, you know.
amazing, amazing guy. And then finally, Jay. Um, like I said, you know, the, being part of the Dog Pound crew and all the fame that came along with that. Um, and Jay lived quite a life, but
Yeah, he did.
still taken from us far too soon.
Yeah. You know, when I was skating and I think a lot of people will say that they wanted to be like Jay, and I wanted to be like Jay, you know. And then Jay and I started competing, and Jay and I were going head to head, and then we became friends
At a young age.
at a very young age. Like you had just mentioned earlier, you know, we made that road trip to his house up in Venice, and I can pretty much remember that now because they used to talk about Shogo's corner in Jay's room. So I slept in Shogo's corner, and then I remember somebody saying, "Just be careful because Fellaine might come in the middle of the night and wake you guys up or throw stuff at you." You know, and so Jay and I became really good friends, and we kept in contact. You know, I remember when he had gotten out of prison in Hawaii. I remember I was making a trip over there, so I got to see him, and even up until he passed, we'd have phone conversations. You know, and I think he found what he was looking for his whole life. You know, it's unfortunate that he passed. You know, but yeah, we're good friends, really good
Yeah.
friends.
Let me transition as we close up here. Passing of your father. I know that this is also a tough one for obvious reasons, but your dad just passed away recently of complications of COVID. I know that your father I knew him to be an incredible father, and seeing him with your mom, a husband, there was just nothing that your dad couldn't do if he wanted to do it. But I know that was very difficult on you and your brothers, your sister. But you also at the same time had some real gentle moments with him in those last days. But I just wanted to. I was obviously heartbroken. I'm sure, like so many others that grew up hanging at your house and being around your dad. So you know, as your dad, I always remember him being the baseball coach to so many people. I just had lunch or dinner, I should say. Gloria and I had lunch with Ron Sellers and his wife, and I mentioned to Ron that your father had passed because I know that you guys were somewhat neighbors for so many years. And Ron said, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Saladino was my baseball coach." And I've heard that from so many other people. And not only did he coach so many people, he coached you, he coached your brothers, he coached your nephews, he coached your nephew Tyler, who ended up playing in the major leagues. And so, but I know your dad was so much more than a coach, and will be missed by everybody that ever met him. I know also your father would be a king in my book forever. He's an amazing man. So I just wanted to tell you how heartbroken we are when we heard that. I see that you brought a little something with you today.
My dad right here.
Yeah.
You know, the more I think of him, the more of an amazing man I realize that he was, you know what I mean? And I think I spoke early on that he had us all play baseball so we'd stay out of trouble because as a kid he was getting into trouble, you know, and there wasn't anything that he couldn't do. You know, growing up there was 5 kids, so we didn't have a whole lot of money, so he did everything. You know, he'd have money to go pay somebody to do something. And if he didn't know how to do it, he'd figure it out, you know. my dad was willing to share whatever he had with you, you know, and I'm sure everybody that was around him has a story about him, you know. I think he gave me, he gave you, he gave everybody many, many things that I think we'll always remember. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was sometimes I can't believe he's gone. And so before I came down there, I told my wife, I said, Cindy, I told Cindy that I was going to bring my dad with me, you know, and yeah, I was, you know, when coaching became a part of his life, and I remember that when he was coaching my son, that and when it came time to picking the teams, you know, he always liked to pick that one kid that didn't know how to play baseball. And he loved to work with kids like that and help them, you know, learn the sport of baseball, learn how to hit, learn how to throw, learn how to play baseball. That's who he was. And one of the most beautiful things is that and you talk about coaching Tyler, is that his dream and my mom's dream was to be able to watch Tyler play in the bigs, you know. And so 2019, we're all at a game, you know, in Arizona, and they're playing the Diamondbacks. This is when Tyler was on the Brewers. And you know, Cindy and I got to watch the Saturday game, and then we didn't get to be there on Sunday. And that Sunday, Tyler hit a grand slam with my parents in the bleachers, you know. And then Monday, I think they were playing the Cincinnati Reds. Tyler's up to bat again, and he hits another grand slam, you know. And like I said, their dream was to see Tyler play in the big leagues, and they got to see that. They got to see that. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I remember your brother letting me know that Tyler, I believe he was with the White Sox at this time, and they were playing the Padres. And I remember Gloria and I going to the game, and I hadn't seen your parents in some time, and I was so excited to see your parents, number one, but to see them, you know, watching Tyler, and actually the whole family was there, your nephews, everybody. It was just amazing, and it was so cool. And then actually, as we were leaving, Steve Cathy showed up, and so it was really cool. And I'm sure, you know, your dad, your mom and dad both were just so incredibly proud. And it doesn't surprise me what you say about your dad, because I know that, you know, for those of us that hung out at your house so often, especially Steve Ellis and myself, being, you know, for the most part orphans, you know, your mom and dad had a big impact on us, and especially your dad. And so it doesn't surprise me that your dad kind of took on projects. I feel like Steve Ellis and I were projects, you know, and so that doesn't surprise me at all. It's very cool to hear that story. Very cool. Yeah. So we're gonna miss him, and I'm sure that you will continue to pick up that phone, thinking you're gonna call him, or forget that he's, you know, that he's not at the other end of that phone. So yeah. Well, listen, Doug, I really appreciate you spending this time being my first guest. As I close, what I wanted to do was just touch on a couple things and ask you, what's next for you? What's next? You got the Hall of Fame, hopefully the induction ceremony coming up this year. I guess we'll see how things go with COVID. But what else do you have? You've got a car project in the garage with a cover on it that's close to being done. I understand you got another bike, so maybe some motorcycle trips coming up
you know,
this
it's
year?
my wife and I really miss traveling. You know, we didn't get to do anything in 2020, and so hopefully I got a trip booked for us to Maui in November, and gonna take my wife to Maui, and actually I'm gonna take some of my dad's ashes, and I'm gonna put some ashes by his parents' headstones, and do that, and you know, we really miss that international travel though. You know, I've been lucky and I'm blessed that I've made friends around the globe, you know, that have invited us to come back and hang out with them, you know, and whether it's Spain or Germany or Portugal or France, you know, skating's amazing. Skating's, you know, opened up so many doors for me, and you know, the friends that we make along the way of you know, of this journey of skateboarding, man.
Yeah.
It's been amazing, you know, but you know, really, hopefully we'll get to do some traveling here, you know, hopefully the car will get done soon. I'm not going to put a date on it, you know, and you know, Cindy and I have been enjoying this bike. I never thought I'd get another bike, and I got another bike, and we got this bike, and we get on it every so often and just go for a ride by ourselves, you know.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this year, I'm sure this year is going to continue to bring big things to you. And yeah, skateboarding is obviously it was the genesis of our relationship, and has been obviously the big reason why we've been friends for so long. So I'm very grateful for that. And again, thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Yeah,
man.
thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Feel
Thank
very
you.
honored to be here and to do this with you. And
My pleasure.
And,
My pleasure.
yeah.
Thank you.